In the world of civil engineering, leadership is people. What do I mean by that? Well, in this episode, I'm lucky to have with me Denise Carter, Chief Strategy Officer of Greenman-Pedersen, Inc., also known as GPI. And Denise is going to take us through her career journey from an engineer starting out of school all the way up to Chief Strategy Officer in the company. And really the running theme for this episode is that leadership is people. And Denise is going to talk about how she was able to kind of hone some of those people skills and build her confidence. And I believe that the strategies she shared can help you do the same. Let's jump in. Before we dive in, we'd like to recognize our sponsor for this episode, PPI, a leader in engineering exam prep for the FE and PE exams. PPI provides expert prep courses and study resources designed to help you pass the FE and PE exams the first time. PPI's live online courses include hours of lectures, problem-solving demonstrations, exam strategy sessions, office hours, and a passing guarantee. Check out PPI today at ppi2pass.com to see all the options available for FE and PE exam prep. Now let's dive into today's episode. All right, now I'm excited to welcome on our guest to the podcast today. Denise Carter is the Chief Strategy Officer at Greenman-Pedersen, Inc., also known as GPI. Denise, welcome to the Civil Engineering Podcast.
Thanks, Anthony. I'm really glad to be here today.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. And let's just get started off. Denise, maybe you can tell our listeners a little bit about GPI and your current role there.
Yeah, so just a little bit about GPI. We're about 1,600 people, a multidisciplined civil engineering firm. And we're based throughout the United States, from Maine all the way down through Florida and west as far as Wisconsin. And most of our disciplines are in the transportation arena. So there's transportation, bridges, roadways, civil engineering. We also do building systems, construction management. We have a geospatial survey and mapping group, water and wastewater, environmental, and we are throughout the Eastern U.S. The other thing that I think is important to note about GPI beyond the disciplines is that we have a really strong employee engagement culture. We have a list of what we call strategic objectives, and our strategic objectives are listed, and we have as number one employee satisfaction. Our focus and our philosophy is that if you have people, good staff that are fully engaged, they're going to develop that quality product. They're going to keep the clients happy. That's going to drive your growth. And that is something that has been sort of our secret to success thus far. We are also an ESOP company. And so individual staff, no matter where you are, no matter what your position is, you have the opportunity to share in the successes of GPI. So that's kind of a cool feature. And we think it's an important part, again, an underpinning of who we are.
I mean, that's great. And I really love what you said there about, really focusing on the success of your people. I do feel like sometimes in the world we live in, things become very project and profit focused, which is obviously a driver if that's how companies grow. But at the same time, it's the people that deliver on the project success, and they're the ones that have to deliver on project quality. And I think keeping them engaged really needs to be at the forefront of what companies focus on today. I mean, we all know that this industry right now is a competitive industry. Everyone's busy. So, theoretically, an employee could really probably work in a lot of different places if they want to, but if they're really passionate about what they're doing in their own company and their company is engaging them, then they want to really focus and they want to help that company grow. And then the ESOP, having the employers have the ability to become owners, for someone like me who's an entrepreneur, I immediately think that sounds like a great opportunity, because I know a lot of engineers get into a company and they say, I want to become an owner, like in, 20 years, out of school, 20 years from now, maybe I'll be able to become some kind of an owner in this company. ESOP obviously gives, some more flexibility with that at younger in your careers, and really everybody. So that sounds like a great approach. So we're going to go a little bit through your career, but for now, just tell us where you sit now in the company and kind of what your role is today.
Yeah. So earlier this year, I sort of shifted into a different role. When I first started with the company back in 1999, I was geographically assigned to the Babylon office, which is the New York City Metro office. And I was the branch manager, for that New York City metro location for 20 years. Earlier this year, I transitioned from that role, so no longer branch manager, but my new title now, and it's a newly created title, is Chief Strategy Officer. Again, it's a newly created position, and it comes out of the growth that GPI has experienced. And so, what I will be doing now is I will be facilitating the continued growth and development in new disciplines, new geographic areas. Collaboration is really going to be critical to our continued growth. And so I will be, driving the facilitation and the collaboration of all the different branches and new disciplines that we are looking to grow into.
That's great. And I think that that's a great approach in terms of, we work with a lot of companies and you see a lot of companies right now growing because of the industry. Of course, there's lots of work available. And there's at some point with these companies that, things happen when you start to grow beyond a certain size that you have to start to account for and plan for in the future. And I think what Denise said right there, that word collaboration is critical, right? I mean, a lot of companies, they don't make the connections between different offices, different regions. And I think they're leaving a lot on the table because you're doing redundant work. If one office, in one location is doing something, the other one could benefit. So I think having someone to kind of try to connect that and oversee that and think about the future is great. And I think the way companies are growing today in our industry, it's something that everyone's going to have to be is looking ahead, especially with technology and everything that's going on today. It's just quickly evolving. So it sounds like an exciting role, and wish you the best with that role, of course. And it sounds interesting. So let's go a little bit through your career, though, through kind of your career journey. Let's start kind of with the earlier years. Tell us about kind of your technical specialty and your background.
Okay, so I have to tell this story, but it's really important because I have to give credit where credit is due. I have to say my mom got me my first job. um, so I wrapped up my college time in the early 80s. We were in the midst of a recession. The industry was not in a good place. And I was looking for an internship between my junior and senior year. And she's, had a friend who had a neighbor who was a secretary at an engineering company. And she said, call this lady, call this lady. I'm like, Mom, I don't know, whatever. So, listen to your mom. Anyway, P.S. I went for the interview. I got the internship that summer. Things were still not in a good place in terms of the economy at that time. And so when I graduated, went back, hey, and again, this is sort of a promo for internships and how important they can be. So I was able to go back to that firm and got my start there. And fast forward a little bit, I ended up working for that person, two different companies, but for the person that hired me, for 17 years. So
Wow.
like I said, listen to your mom, and
Yeah.
those connections, those network connections really help. So in any case, man, I did a little bit of everything. I did survey and field data collection, and I counted cars, and I took measurements, and I was a rod person and all those different things. But most of what I did in the beginning was sort of municipal roadway work. And then sort of like morphed into the highway design. And we had a significant project for the New York State Thruway that actually morphed from a highway design job all the way through to resident engineering and inspection. And just happenstance, I ended up being not only I was involved with the survey of that a little bit, involved with some of the preliminary and final design. And then in the end, I actually spent a good amount of time out in the field with some of the REI work. And so it was a really kind of a neat thing that where I saw that arc, and it sort of clicked in my mind, like, wow, like I really enjoy being out in the field. And so, I that was eventually sort of where I gravitated into it. So I spent a lot of time out in the field as a resident engineer on a bunch of different projects. And so, along the way, I got involved. Like I said, I started with that one gentleman who was the principal in charge of the firm that I started right out of school. And then about 5 years into my career, he actually started up his own company and asked me to come on board. And so I said, okay, that sounds good. And so I did that, and that really helped me to learn the business side of it, right? Like you're like literally creating something from nothing. I definitely learned a lot along the way, honed some more of my technical skills, but that also, gave me my start into an understanding of the business, both on the design side and on the CI side. So
That's
that was
awesome.
definitely.
That is, I first of all, I was laughing a lot there when you're talking about your mom, because when I was in high school, my mom called my friend's father, who was a civil engineer, and said, my son's thinking about engineering. And I ended up getting a summer internship holding a rod in the woods. And I'm thinking to myself, this is engineering. But anyway, I stuck with it. I ended up going to work for that company, and that got acquired, and I stayed there for a long time. But it's always interesting to me, even after doing hundreds of podcast interviews, listening to everyone's career journey, because everything is different. But a lot of times what it comes back to is what Denise said, is that there's always kind of opportunities in your career. Denise had that project that sounded like it kind of allowed her to see a lot of different things, because in civil engineering, you could do 100 things. You probably do more than 100 things. There's so many niche disciplines, so many different things you can do depending on your location, company. You need to see it to even know what's available sometimes. And that's why it's helpful. Some companies I know have rotations early on with like recent graduates, so they get to see the different departments and different disciplines. And so, it's good to hear Denise talk about that. And what I found in a similar career journey, starting in surveying a little bit in the field, was that it really helps you become better when you get in the office, because you understand what's going on a project site, and you can have conversations with contractors, and you kind of have that insider information that a lot of design engineers, unfortunately, if they go right into the office, they don't have that background. And to me, it makes it more difficult, because, you don't know how the project's being constructed and things of that nature. So, again, it's just another example of someone, kind of getting out there, getting an opportunity, and the internships are critical. And if you're out there and you're listening, I know we have listeners at all different ages. So some of you, maybe you're maybe you're a student. So make sure you're getting an internship, because the internships a lot of times turn into great opportunities long term. If you work for a company at the highest level of a company, make sure you have a good internship program. Right? These are things that are critical, I think, from both ends of the spectrum, because really that's kind of your future, the future of your company, the future of your organization. It starts with that. And so I want to go back a little bit now, or kind of progress through your career, getting back to management, because a lot of engineers, they come to the proverbial fork in the road and they say, do I want to stick really with the technical route? Do I want to keep doing this kind of work? Or do I want to elevate and go into management? Obviously, for you, you chose management. You were a branch manager. Now you're at a very high level in the organization. At what point in your career did you decide that that's something that you wanted to do, go into that management route?
So that's a good question, right? As far as like, did I consciously choose it, or did that really evolve the way sort of my career path evolved? So, as I said, just 5 years into my career, I kind of jumped on with this great guy who was a tremendous mentor for me. I just want to say, and he wanted to start up his own company, and he said, Denise, I'd love to bring you on, but I can only bring you on 3 days a week. And I said, that's great, because I just had my first son then. I said, I can only work 3 days a week, so it kind of worked out perfectly. Anyhow, but that experience, or that opportunity, where really, like, you really have to do everything. When I say everything, I mean, like, we even like vacuum the floors, right?
Right.
There were times when you had to sort of like hold on to the check, like, just to make sure, like, we have to make sure that we get paid, from this client before we go on and do that. And some of that was a little hair raising, but some of that really taught me some really important, lessons about, how this business works and how it goes. Now, again, it wasn't a purely management position, because when you're in a sort of firm that we started with 3, 5 people, it was the technical work, it was the proposal work, it was the financial work, learning how to do IT, just everything. Um, and I think what was really attractive for me in terms of, like, that component of work was, just the variety of it. Like, it really required me to stretch in a lot of different ways, right? It wasn't just sort of, work out the alignment for this particular roadway, or do that intersection design. It was really something that engaged a lot of different components of my skill sets. I had to do a presentation, or we had to go to see clients, or we had to hire people, right, and convince them, hey, come and work for this 4-person firm. So
Mm.
there were a lot of different aspects to that I found just really engaging. I don't know, it was fun.
Yeah.
Um, and so like it wasn't like, oh, I want to be a manager. Like in that moment, it was like my skills were building in a lot of these different things. And I just really enjoyed it. It was fun. We were successful. And it was just kind of cool to go in there. And then as the firm continued to grow, obviously there was more management that needed to be done. I was, one of the founding people there, and so it evolved in that way. But yeah,
Evolution. It was like an
yeah, it
evolution
was,
for you.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, and it's important to note because it's exposure to these opportunities a lot of times that turns you on to them, right? Like an engineer may not realize that these kinds of opportunities are available unless you take a chance, you take a job, you try something in your existing firm that's available, a position that becomes available. Maybe it requires relocating or whatnot. And I think one thing that I'll mention is I think that there's opportunities like this available in all companies. And I think that I had the similar opportunity to Denise where I did work for that very small company in the beginning. And we were like literally sweeping the floors and then designing, parking lots and stormwater and stuff like that. So it was an amazing experience. But I think also if you go out of school and you work for a larger company, there can be opportunities like that too, like within your office, within your region, to take opportunities. And sometimes you just got to try things. I mean, Denise said kind of like broadened her horizons. It was a little bit uncomfortable maybe for her at some times, but that's how you get different experiences. And a lot of times that's how people end up where they are because, they didn't have a plan to get there. They tried something, they found out that they liked it, or they met someone and then that person led to something else. So I would just say, like, I guess one takeaway for that could really be for those of you out there is, try different things. I mean, there may be jobs where you're doing a lot of different things. I think especially early in your career, the more things you can see, then you just understand what's available to you. That's the thing about civil engineering. I mean, there are going to be jobs in civil engineering in 3 months from now that may not even exist today because of the technology and the different things out there. So keep kind of your eyes open, and that management may come for you, may not come for you. It depends on what you feel about it. And so moving a little bit further into the management, kind of talking a little bit more about this, Denise. Management and leadership roles require a lot of skills that they don't teach us in engineering school, whether it's communicating with people, thinking through business or finance type decisions. How did you, and I'm sure you continue to do this today, how did you build these types of skill sets?
So that's a good question. So, a couple of things come to my mind. First of all, and I made reference to it a little earlier. I was really fortunate to have a couple really good mentors over the course of my career. Now, I will say that it was not like a formal mentorship program, but a couple people come to my mind that were just really, really helpful in shaping my approach to things. Super, optimistic, really hardworking, just good people. And so they were very helpful, and they definitely gave me a lot of guidance. But a little bit back to the point that you were just making in terms of finding opportunities, and this is something that I learned from the mentor. Really encouraged me to get involved with professional and technical societies.
Mm.
I cannot say enough about that. um, ASCE, went through the Long Island branch. We have a Long Island branch out up here, and there's sort of a succession. You sort of go in as treasurer, and then you move up to secretary, first vice president. All the way up. There are so many. ACEC, I was involved in as well, and early in my career, and that gives such a great opportunity. It hits a lot of points. For the first, it's an opportunity to serve the industry, right? All of those technical and professional societies, whether it's ITE, ASHE, whatever it is, take your pick. There are tons of them that are out there. They're always looking for volunteers. They have tons of committees. And so it really is a great sort of, proving ground, to go out
Mm,
there and put events together and engage with other people. And you could do it when you're young, I mean, I was young when I started. But you will have opportunity to get up in front of a group of people. You will have opportunity to do some organizing and coordinating, take on a leadership role. And I would really, really, that I found that really invaluable for me. And even within your organization,
mm,
right? Even if there's not, okay, I want to put you into this management training program. I mean, some opportunities are there. If you have that opportunity, absolutely grab it. But look for opportunities to look for needs within your organization. Like as an example, we have a like a called GPI Connect, which is like a community service and student outreach group. And within that group, there are leaders that just emerge, right? That take the lead on different
mm.
things. You don't have to run a project to be a manager or a leader. So definitely look for those opportunities. So again, in my
That's a
experience, mentors and then also the professional societies, get involved, get engaged, and it will be well worth your while.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I will say, like a lot of our guests echo that sentiment in terms of professional associations. But what I hear, and Denise said it as well, is it's not just about joining them. It's about being active and taking a leadership position in those societies,
Yes.
because that's when you get the opportunity to practice your leadership skills. That's where you get the chance to practice your speaking skills and conversational skills, which are critical in becoming a leader in engineering. And to me, the number one thing that helps you to do, which I think a lot of people forget about, is it builds your confidence. And we're going to talk about confidence in a minute here. But to me, we do a lot of training at EMI, and we can train people forever on different people skills and project management skills. But if they don't have the confidence to then utilize those skills and get involved in those conversations and get up in front of people, the training goes out the window. And that's just kind of an underlying thing. And I do think that volunteering and association can give you a lot of those things, because you have to take action. You have to get up in front of the meeting and talk to people. You have to make a decision about an event, and decisions that you're not used to making. And so I definitely would totally agree with Denise. And I can tell you, don't just sign up for the ASE membership and call yourself a member. You've got to become an active member. And you're also going to build relationships, which we didn't even really mention. Maybe find a mentor like Denise did as well, but just building relationships, which opens up opportunities for you in your career and for your company, because most civil engineers at some point in their careers are going to get into some kind of business development or be expected to bring in business or have client relationships, right? And all of those things can stem from that work that you do in associations and outreach and things of that nature. So that's important. So let's kind of go down that road a little bit. You can go to an association, you can have a mentor, and you can start to build some of these skills for sure. But as a leader, specifically in a position like yours, Denise, you need confidence, and that's really important. So talk to us about how you were able to build your confidence to be able to take on some of the bigger leadership roles that you've taken on in your career.
Well, I'm going to start by saying that, if I waited until I was fully 100% confident before saying yes to something, I might still be holding that rod.
Mhm.
um, sort of a catchphrase is, do it afraid, right?
Mm,
Um, um, you know, uh, Again, I think it goes back to the mentorship piece. I think that I have had the benefit, not just in my professional life, but also in my personal life, to have people around me that maybe saw things in me that I couldn't see yet, right? And I think that's really important to have, right? Because if we waited, I'll just speak from my experience, right? If I waited, for the confidence in order to step out, then, it's tough to move forward in that way. Because in order to grow, to evolve, to change, there always has to be like that little bit of a leap of faith, right? It's like that trapeze artist that you have to let go of that bar behind you before you grab the next one. And there's that like moment of suspended animation where you go, I hope there's a net there, but you do have to reach and stretch. And so, for me, a lot of it was just, a lot of, inner work. I've worked with different coaches. I've been involved with different leadership training programs. A lot of that really focused on the people skills, right? Um, because really it's like anything, it's always about the people, it's always about the
Yeah.
relationships, whether it's your team, your clients, your partners, your colleagues, and being able to just show up as who you are, like that authenticity piece. I think it took me a long time to get to.
Mm.
I had to learn how to trust myself. I had to let go of this notion of having to be perfect, right? Because
All right.
no one is perfect.
Yeah.
Um, and I also had to learn to trust my team. Like I am not, like, no manager is alone, because if you're alone, you're not managing, right?
Mm.
You're on your own. So having the recognition that I'm not by myself. There is a team around me. Good, solid, good people, technically sound people. And just know that, mistakes are going to happen. Like, everything is not going to be perfect. Because as soon as I aim for perfectionism, then my confidence is going to go out the window, right? Because no one is
Not gonna
perfect.
get it. Yeah. Yeah. You're
So
setting a goal that's too
it's a
high.
little bit it's a little bit of, like, psychology, a little bit of spirituality, and a little bit of practicality. And it's taken some time, and I'm still learning, right? It's still evolving, especially, again, as people move forward, and I've moved into this new role. There was another sort of, like, level of confidence that I needed to move up to. So it's sort of an ongoing process, I guess.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it will continue to be right for all of us as we go through our careers. We get new positions, new challenges, new opportunities. But I think the one thing really that Denise said that we should think about and just reinforce here is that it's not like one day you just say, "Oh, now I'm confident." It happens because you're doing little things over and over in your career that helping you to build your confidence. So, like, if you're waiting to be confident, you know, you might never do anything, or you might never try anything that's big and scary because you're not confident. You have to do some of those things, get a little bit of a confidence in yourself and saying, wow, I did it. It wasn't that bad. And then the next time it becomes a little bit easier. And I know for me, like when I started doing speaking and training, I was terrible. I wasn't a good speaker when I just kind of left engineering and I went to Toastmasters and I signed up for Toastmasters. And if anyone's not familiar with it, it's just a group that helps you to better your speaking skills. And their theory is essentially like you get better at something by, desensitization, meaning do it as many times as you can. It becomes easier. So, like, if you say I'm not a good public speaker, I'm not confident, I'm not going to do it, well, then you're never going to become good at it. But if you just push yourself, go through it a couple times, struggle with it, you're building confidence every time you get up there. So I think that's a really good thing to think about in your career is if you're not confident, that's okay. That just means that you're going to have to be not confident in situations to get there. And, you got to push yourself. Maybe you get a coach, maybe you get a mentor that can help you and that can kind of push you and say, I know what you have inside of you. Just got to get to it. You got to keep pushing it. And
Mhm.
so I want to go a little bit deeper on this one. This episode's part of our Women in Civil Engineering series. And I know from having the opportunity to speak with a lot of female civil engineers, including my wife, who also worked out in construction out in the field, it can be a challenge to kind of build that confidence and do some of these things in an industry that does have more men than women. And I know we're all working on that, but it still is that way. Um, so what advice would you give for some of our women listeners out there that they have big goals and aspirations and they really want to, be confident and go out there and achieve a lot in their careers? You've done amazing things in your career and obviously you got a long way to go, but what can you share with them that they're, going to ready to get out there and they want to get into leadership positions?
Yeah, well, I guess a few things we sort of covered already, right? So the first thing would be to, like, build your cabinet, right? Find your mentors, and again, it doesn't have to be like a formal mentor training. Identify, be on the lookout proactively, and identify people that you respect. And I would also say, have those mentors be diverse if you can. You don't only have to have a woman mentor. You don't have to have one mentor.
Right.
Um, I would say mix it up. male, female, maybe someone that's, a little older, maybe someone that's sort of your contemporary, just to get different points of view. And again, depending on the age, however old you are, right? There's all these generational differences, right? So, having those different perspectives, I think is really important. So I would say definitely find diverse mentors, right? When you are given opportunities or when you see an opportunity, maybe that's something different. Say yes, right? Like don't wait until you're 100% ready, right? And this goes back to the mentor piece, right? Yeah, where there's an opportunity, whatever it is, it could be something small. And again, you sort of have to build on your successes, but just say yes, even when don't feel like you're 100% ready. Just go ahead and step out on faith. And then, as I said, to get engaged with your technical groups, that's really important. And there are some groups. I'm thinking about WTS in particular, who's I mean, they've got a great Greater New York chapter. They have a New Jersey chapter now as well, and Philadelphia, and it's just a dynamite group.
For
Both.
someone that doesn't know, what is that? What does that stand for?
So WTS stands for, I think it's Women's Transportation Seminar, right? So
Right.
it's a group of mostly transportation professionals. Most are women, but boy, they've got a lot going on. And if you want to get involved and you want to get connected, that I would definitely point any woman. They do actually have a more formal mentorship program, but it's a good way to network and connect up with people that have been tremendously successful. Not on, I mean, and it's both the industry, private industry, and also agency folks that get involved with that. So it's a real great organization.
That's great. No, I mean, listen, I love that advice and that, find a mentor. And sure, if you're female, I think it's probably good to have one female mentor, but don't
Yes,
limit
for sure.
yourself to that. Like Denise said, because you might also be able to have a male mentor that can give you a lot of great advice and that can help you and that can bring you along. So kind of keep the perspectives open. And yeah, I think WTS is great. I did some speaking for their group in Greater New York, and they're very well organized. They have a lot of good events. And there's also, I know, Society of Women Engineers. We've done some
Yep.
presentations for that you can check out as well. But there are plenty of opportunities. And really, part of the reason that we do this Women in Civil Engineering series on the podcast is so that for those of you out there that are females in this industry, you can go to civilengineeringpodcast.com and you can see all the interviews like Denise's, and you may see other people that you can look up to. Maybe you want to follow them on LinkedIn. Because I know for me, just seeing people do certain things gives me confidence. If I feel like, oh, you know what, I've got kind of a similar background to them, or I think that maybe I can do that too, or maybe I can reach out to them. And so it's always good to connect people with other people. I kind of believe in that. And that's part of what we like to put the content out there for. All right. So kind of last question here in this segment, Denise, let's just talk briefly about your new position, Chief Strategic Officer, CSO. Obviously, this is a new position for you. I don't want to say it's challenging for an engineering professional, but I imagine that it's something different than engineering in a lot of ways. And, in a fast growing company like GPI, there's a lot that you take on with this role. So talk to me about your thought process in taking on this position. Was it something that came up and you were like, wow, this is exciting. It's a new opportunity. Just take us through kind of how someone would kind of look at something like that in their career unfold.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, I served as the New York City Metro branch manager for the past 20 years. Um, you know, great position, great team there. We grew the location there considerably across different disciplines. Um, and after having, it was really a goal that I set for myself, right? Where I said, 20 years in that position, for me, I think it's time for me to take on a different challenge, right? And I really wasn't quite sure exactly what the next step was going to be for me. But again, I'll go back to GPI and a tremendous company that it is. I was very open about the executive team about I said, listen, I said it's an opportunity for someone else to take on a leadership role there.
Mhm.
I've hit a bunch of really significant metrics there. I feel like I have accomplished what I was hoping, for that operation. And I just was looking for a different challenge. And so, we got into conversation with the executive team. Again, we were looking at where GPI was overall. We looked at sort of the platform that was built in the New York City metro area, and essentially a position was created. I expressed what I thought that I could bring in terms of value to the organization, to sort of lift that model of success that we have enjoyed in New York City metro, and apply it to the other operations, both the existing operations, and then where again we were looking to grow geographically, primarily in the southeast, pushing out further west, and so on. And so the position was created. I began to transition out, um, starting in 2020, and of course COVID hit, and that was kind of like a
Mhm.
crazy situation there. But we were able to get through it all, and so now I have the opportunity to get involved with the other operations, the other locations, identifying best practices, looking at our overall business strategy, applying a model for growth. Right now the industry is sort of in a place that we haven't seen in a very long time. There are a lot of opportunities. There are some labor shortage pressures that are
Mhm.
being asserted. We keep hearing about this infrastructure bill, but the market is really, really strong right now. A lot of technology innovation that we're looking to incorporate, and so again, it's sort of like when I talked about the management, the sort of the transition to management. It's fun, right?
Mm.
It's a lot of different things. It engages a lot of different aspects of areas of my career and development that just kind of takes it up a notch. I have the opportunity to collaborate with the other senior managers across the organization. I'm learning things about the organization that
Yeah.
I didn't know, right? Because I was really more focused on my operations, and so it's just a really great team of people that I have the opportunity to work with in a little bit of a different way, and it's going to take GPI to that next level. So I'm really excited about it.
That's great. No, again, congratulations on the position. It sounds like an exciting position and an exciting time, for a company that's growing, which is great. And really, I think just one takeaway for me there from that, from what Denise said about that is, goals are important in your career because, if you go through a goal setting process, you might recognize when you feel like you want to do something different, when you feel like it's time for a new challenge. You have that reflection period that sometimes if we just have our head down and we're working on project after project, we don't see those things. Like Denise felt like I need a new challenge, and then she was able to have a conversation. She ended up in this new position that sounds like so far she's enjoying, and there's a lot going on there. So that's great. So a lot of stuff here. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back with Denise on the other side, and we're going to wrap up by putting her on the civil engineering career hot seat. So we are back here with Denise Carter, Chief Strategy Officer at GPI. All right, Denise, it's time for the civil engineering hot seat. You ready?
I hope so.
All
Can I
right.
phone a friend?
No, I think you'll be fine. You'll be all right. All right. So, do you have any specific rituals that you practice every day? For example, do you have a specific morning routine or a lunchtime routine or just something that you do consistently on a daily basis that has contributed to your success as a professional?
Well, in terms of a morning ritual, I'll say that every morning, my wife and I, we do a inspirational reading. There's a book with a daily reader that we read out of every morning. It just really starts my day. It gets us both centered and focused, and it kind of remembers. It just reminds me like what's really important, right?
That's great.
Sometimes we get caught up in everything that we do is really important, I know, but just to sort of have that morning ritual, that morning focus, and to do it together is something that I just find centering, and it gets me going.
Kicks off the day right and gets you in the right, frame of mind. I think that's great. Yeah, I have quite a few books like that too. I think just getting in a routine like that,
Yep.
getting going, whether it's a couple of quotes or something in the morning, I love that. That's awesome. All right, let's talk about books. Is there a book that you might recommend to engineers or professionals, or just any book, generally speaking, that maybe stood out for you in your career that's been very helpful in your personal or professional development?
I'm going to call out two. There's one is like a classic, right? It's The Gifted Boss. And this was a book that was introduced to me many years ago. And it really just helped me to understand, sometimes when we get into that position of being, a boss, a supervisor, a manager, we feel like, oh, I have to, be a certain way. But the Gifted Boss really helped me to understand in really kind of simple, basic language, right? How offering yourself up as basically a servant leader really can make the difference in everything. And so I would really recommend that book. The author escapes me now. But the other book that I just read recently is it's Where You Are Is Not Who You Are. And this is a book by Ursula Burns. And Ursula Burns was the first and only African-American woman CEO of a Fortune 100 company. She was the CEO of Xerox. And what attracted me to that book, not only the fact that she was a woman of color and she was able to achieve that level of success, but she's a mechanical engineer that graduated from Poly. So I
Oh,
was like,
wow.
okay, I'm reading this book.
That's awesome.
And and a lot of her journey was, she kind of worked her way up through the organization. I didn't know a whole lot about the Xerox organization, but listen, an engineer that becomes CEO, I mean, come on, that's
Yeah.
must reading.
I mean,
Um,
yeah, expect that's 100% for Poly. Like, it's a local school around here for those of you not in
exactly.
the area, in the New York City
Yep.
area. But that's awesome. That is great. And I think that I like asking this question because, first of all, I get a lot of good books to read, and this is two more that I never heard about, so that's put them on my list. But I do think that there are books that you can read that can change your career. You can make a change with a skill set. You can, and it happened to me many times. So these sound like two excellent books. And by the way, I looked up The Gifted Boss here. It's Dale Doughton. So that was the first one that Denise mentioned, and we'll list these in the show notes at civilengineeringpodcast.com. All right, let's
And I'll also
oh,
say
go ahead.
about the other book, the title attracted me. Where you are is not who you are, right?
Right.
So that I thought that was an interesting title. I was intrigued by it, and then as I got deeper into it, I was like, okay, this is going on my Audible list for sure. So
Yeah, no,
it was a good listen.
it's true because a lot of times, a title can be very stereotypical, right? And you might even shy away from a position because of the title. And to me, the title of this book kind of makes you think that, if you get into a position that the title doesn't define you, you can define the role, right? And you can kind of grow into it, which is awesome. I like that a lot. That's great. All right. So thinking back on your managers of the past, think about whether it's a favorite or favorite managers, and you don't need to name anyone, but what made them your favorite? Just trying to understand kind of what you've seen in terms of managers that can really engage with people that stood out for you.
Yeah, so I would say the common thread throughout the managers that I just admired, appreciated the most is just their generosity of sharing their knowledge and experience, right? And just like good people,
Mm,
like good people, like never like lording it over anybody, but just generous with what with their understanding of the industry, with their knowledge, and just very willing to impart. And so that is something that informs how I try to approach people. Not always perfect every time, right? Because perfection is something that we can seek, but it's not going to be the overriding factor. But yeah, just generosity of their time and their knowledge of the industry is something that sticks out in my mind.
that's great. Yeah. I mean, we keep coming back to the idea that leadership really is people, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's been a kind of a running theme here, and I totally agree with that. All right, so I've got one final question for you. We call this the civil engineering career elevator advice question. So if you got into an elevator with a civil engineer and you had 30 to 40 seconds with him or her, and let's say maybe they're earlier on in their career, what would you say to them in that 30 or 40 seconds?
I would say you have chosen a phenomenal profession. You have the opportunity to impact more lives than you can imagine, because every single thing that civil engineers do affects the daily lives of people, whether it's the environment, where they live, how they get from point A to point B, just the way they experience their entire surroundings. You have the opportunity to really impact many, many lives, and it's a great profession, it really is.
That's awesome. Yeah, I totally agree. And that's something that I think managers and leaders in the world of civil engineering need to remind their team of that as well, because I feel like sometimes we get tied into, oh, I got to design this road, I got to design this road. And you have to remind them that you're transporting thousands of people to work safely every day, right? Like there's a real people factor behind civil engineering, improving the lives of people. And I think sometimes we forget that when we look at projects and budgets and expenses and all
Yes.
that stuff. And managers need to remind people of that, because people become more passionate and more engaged when they understand that their work is improving someone's life, as opposed to just saying, I got the road designed, check it off my quality list, or whatever the case may be. So I think that that's a great point for us to end on. Denise Carter, GPI, I want to just thank you for joining me here on the Civil Engineering Podcast and giving some time and some valuable advice for all of our listeners. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me, Anthony. I really appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Civil Engineering Podcast on YouTube, produced by the Engineering Management Institute. We're always looking for new ways to help engineers become effective managers and leaders. You can view all of our content on our website at engineeringmanagementinstitute.org, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel here for our weekly videos. Until next time, please continue to engineer your own success.